Hello, everyone. I'm Kufane Mudisa, and welcome to Conversations with Kufane. I'm super excited because I'm joined by a very good friend who had featured in a previous episode. That is Sipho Mabaso. Hi, Sipho, our
Oh,
HR specialist consultant, all things business
practitioner.
partner,
It's cute.
practitioner. And today we're going to be, I guess, continuing our conversation on, thriving in the modern workplace. I don't think it's a conversation that can ever end.
Exactly.
The same issues you talked about then that were relevant then was last year are still relevant in 2024. And I think we're still navigating a lot. But before you get into that, could you please introduce yourself and tell us what you do and why you do it?
So, as introduced, my name is Sipho Mabaso. I'm an HR practitioner, HR business partner, and I work for a global management consulting firm. And what we do in HR is just helping organizations to have the right people in the right positions at the right time.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a lot that goes into making sure that that happens, right? And that includes recruiting people in line with the business needs, making sure that people are developed in line with what the business requirements are, and everything centers around where the business is going. So whatever the business looks at from a strategy point of view, we bring in the human side of things. And that also then includes part of today's conversation just around culture. What would make people stay? Because it's one thing hiring good people, you also then have to manage them staying and how do you keep them
Absolutely.
engaged? And that's what we do. And we do that as generalists. We bring in experts in the field, in the various fields as well, just to make sure that we get it right.
Yeah, you've been doing it for quite some time now, and I believe that you kind of found your niche within the space to say that this is what you're more passionate about. Is it with regard to the culture itself, the workforce culture, or maybe teaching leaders how to lead better and recruit more leaders in a way?
So it's more the latter that I've fallen in love with. The other pieces I do because they're part of the job,
Yeah.
but I've really fallen in love with the concept of leadership development because what I've picked up is anything that's human related does not have a formula. But when you've got good leaders, they will know how to navigate every situation, right? One of the things that I always say to the leaders that I coach is when you've got five people reporting to you, you need to learn how to manage them differently.
Hmm.
So it's not about you, it's about them, and they're looking at you. So you need to manage them differently. Going back to the fact that there's no one way of doing things, and teaching and coaching people around that element has become a passion because I believe that when you coach a person on how to become a good leader today, wherever they go, they become good leaders and
Yeah.
hopefully develop further leaders. And yeah.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about a lot of different leadership dynamics, employee HR dynamics. Oftentimes, HR is hated. I don't know why, what you guys have done. But there are a lot of trends that we saw in 2023. We talked about, previous episode, we talked about quiet quitting. We talked about it again. But I find now it's quite interesting based on social media, specifically TikTok, where it's no longer so quiet. It's a very rash and boisterous quitting done by Gen Z in comparison to maybe millennials and the alpha generation. So when you think about the trends surrounding the workplace or working culture, when you look at 2023, what do you kind of think 2024 will look like?
So it would be more or less the same. However, I think the base now is that people have now become comfortable post COVID because I think COVID shook a lot of us. And just after that, everybody was trying to secure themselves in whatever space they're in. And I think we're going to see 2024 as a time where people might pivot more
Mm.
into other areas and get out of the comfort of their own spaces. In the last 2 years, we've debated the Gen Zs and the kind of personas they are. And what the millennials are learning from the Gen Zs is actually, this is what I've always wanted to do. I wanted to quit. I
Yeah,
wanted to pivot. I
yeah,
wanted to change. But we've always fallen into the trap of security and wanting to secure a job, secure a salary.
yeah.
And I think with the last 2 years and the conversations that came with it, we'll see a lot of people moving. We'll probably see a lot of people tapping into their passions, tapping into entrepreneurial projects and everything else that people had been thinking about. Because, like I said, COVID disturbed a lot of it.
Yes.
And after that, everybody just wanted security.
Yeah, I actually had a friend. I still have a friend who was able to set the terms of her employment, which to me sounded crazy, but it worked.
Yeah.
And now that's something that I'm questioning now to say that I've heard even millennials who say that, you interview me during the interview process, I'm going to interview you.
Yeah.
As an HR practitioner or whoever you are questioning me, are you suitable to be my leader? Is this the organization that I need to be in? So this is so different. So I'd like you to just maybe touch base on that. Is that how you would advise people to see things? But also if you're very conservative and person, it might be a bit difficult for you to be that bold as well during the interview process.
No, definitely. And I appreciate people that have thought of that, because we always say when we recruit, of course, we want the best person for the role. But and when you're starting out, right, straight from university, early in your career, you want whatever that you can get, right? But as you progress in your career, you want exactly what you've described. You want a leader that has a backbone. At least that's my list, and that's what I do. You want a leader that has a backbone. You want a leader that is influential. You want a leader that cares about people. You want a leader that understands what the tone of the culture is within their team. Forget the organization, the team. Because what happens in most global or big corporations is that when you go to their values list or when you go to their website, they've got a defined culture. But go inside, you'll then realize different departments have different subcultures. So what you want to know is the person that's recruiting you, what uh, culture do they subscribe to? What kind of management style do they subscribe to? And when you ask these questions around values, culture, be direct. If you're going to be reporting to a Nomzamo, ask Nomzamo, this question is directed to you. Because if you don't do that, I'm going to respond from an HR point of view, and trust me, I'm going to give you a good answer. But I'm not the one that's going to be managing you on a day-to-day basis. So I definitely agree with that concept. Ask questions and be direct in the sense that they are directed to the person that's going to be leading you on a day-to-day basis. Whether you shy or not, it's not you trying to be controversial. Just think around things that are important to you. So if flexible working is important to you, do ask, what do you guys subscribe to, right? And again, ask it to the line manager, because from an HR point of view, I'm going to say the organization subscribes to, flexible working hours.
Absolutely.
And then you come on board and your manager says, no, in my team, we are here Monday to Friday. Maybe sometimes I'll give you Friday half day. So you want to hear it from the person that's going to be managing you on a day-to-day basis without necessarily having to be controversial. It's just asking questions on things that you know will matter to you.
Yeah. I appreciate what you're saying because I'm also realizing, and this is also based on conversations that I've had with um, young professionals and those who've progressed, who've said that they also struggled with the concept of negotiating their salaries. And I'll give you a scenario here, a real life scenario here. This young lady, she's a woman of color. Actually, that's an American thing to say. She's like, woman of color doesn't make sense to me, to be honest. So she's a black, she's an African, she's South African, a black South African lady. And she said that she wasn't from the best of backgrounds. And her friend, who was also black but was adopted, no, actually had a stepfather who was Caucasian. And she realized that they did the same job, same position, but she got higher pay than she did. And she was wondering, is it because she wasn't taught how to ask, how to inquire for something more than what she knows? And also, she also did kind of blame the fact that she didn't do enough research about how much she should be getting paid in that particular industry, in that particular line of work, compared to her friend who, because her father kind of knew, well, not really kind of, really knew you have to be very determined and be very bold in your claim, say, I want this, if this is not what you're offering, I'm out. And so it was a very different dynamic for her. So negotiating salaries, I know it's a very difficult discussion. So did you touch on that?
Just to test, was this in the same organization or just same industry?
Same organization. So it maybe, so it wasn't an issue of color.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
then now what?
It's an issue of bias. And that's another thing that we try and teach leaders on is for people to be aware of their biases. If I start with the politics of it, if you're black and you go to a private school, your chances of succeeding in corporate are high.
Yeah.
If you can speak Afrikaans in South Africa as a black person, your chances of
Same
succeeding
thing in
in
Botswana.
multiple
Same
industries,
thing. Yeah.
your chances are high. And these are privileges that we just need to be aware of, that we've got, that it's not just about color. It's the politics. It's you sound smooth,
You're
we,
commercial enough.
yeah, we can take you to clients because of the way you enunciate and the way
Yeah.
you pronounce and everything else. Those are advantages that your background and your upbringing will give you, despite color, right? And in this instance, when it's junior employees, the likelihood is that you'll come on board more or less on the same salaries. But what tends to happen again in organizations is that the one that is preferred or the one that is liked is sometimes given additional projects. And what additional projects do is that they give you an opportunity to shine and to sell yourself even more. And then you progress quicker because somebody liked you and they gave you an opportunity. Um, Unfortunately, as an individual, what you can do is, yes, you can do your research just to test around as to what do people in your field, in your space, what are they asking for in the market? And when the opportunity is right, then ask for that. So be it after a year, be it after 2 years in the position, you can bring up the conversation. Whether you're going to get it or not, is neither here nor there, but you would have planted the seed. Because what we find for a lot of black people is that we accept what we are offered, and leaders are happy for you to be earning 10,000 because hey, you accepted it, right? And they are not wrong. Technically, they're not wrong. You accepted it. Um, what makes it tough, and it's difficult for me to also express this because I'm also one of the people behind the scenes. So what we do is we work with what we refer to as salary bands. And those salary bands allow us to waive between the entry level and the maximum of a salary band, as an example. And what managers do, like I said, is once you've exposed this intern onto projects, you'll find the leader coming through to negotiate for a higher increase for them because they're still within the band. But the one that does not have a good leader or an influential leader, the leader is just happy with them earning 10,000. So again, going back to choosing your bosses, influential
Yeah, this is
bosses
why I'm an
will.
entrepreneur, to be honest. It's all these dynamics that just have me. If you don't like me, then what am I going to do? What should I do to? And then there's this thing of I don't know what it's called, but I think it's something. It's a punishment for working hard. I forgot the term that they were someone had used, but it's just the idea, and I've seen it happen before, where someone does so much more, and because you've done more than required, you're given more work, and we're going to keep you in that position. And if you leave that position, who do you expect to do that work?
Let's see again.
Exactly.
With the 2% increase, if you like it.
What
So,
is that about?
so again, it's a very, that particular phenomenon requires people to know how to negotiate for themselves. So if you are um, in a team where the rest of the team leaves, and you are taking on more, you've been given a good opportunity to start renegotiating. Where it becomes tough is when you've got a full team, but everybody just does the bare minimum and you wanting to shine. What I always say, Hofa, is that people have a tendency, hard workers have a tendency of saying, I'll allow my work to speak for itself. And I say, work does not speak, people do.
Whew.
So
Yeah.
what you then need to learn to do is to, during your year-end reviews or mid-year review sessions, make that clear that you've been working longer, but it's not just longer. It's what have you delivered, right? So what did the department need and what is it that you delivered? Not the number of hours that you worked. People that work long hours are given vouchers, are given, a day off here and there. It's what have you delivered in line with what the department was looking to achieve in that specific year. So let's talk numbers, let's talk deliverables, not necessarily long hours. Again, this is industry dependent, this is job dependent. There are roles that require you to be on site for 7 days instead of 5. But if you are in a professional setup, the likelihood is that you would get further ahead if you were to speak numbers and speak deliverables rather than the amount of hours you spend in the office.
Yeah, and then I know that personality plays a huge role in this. I know a lot of introverts are like, oh God, I didn't get this position. I didn't get a promotion because I couldn't speak for myself. Because Sipho says that your work doesn't speak for your people too. The extrovert got it, and to be honest with you, I see it also in the entrepreneurial sphere. If I'm able to be bold enough, and I guess in a way just finesse myself through a contract, I will, and figure it out later. And then those who are unable and who are talented and are gifted and are unable to kind of speak up for themselves struggle with that. So how does one really position themselves to kind of shine and align themselves with the right sponsor or mentor?
And I think the latter part of your statement is exactly where the solution lies, right? Is find people that can help you. Somebody wrote on Twitter last week that hard skills get you hired, but soft skills is what gets you promoted.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm a chartered accountant. I've got it on paper. I'll hire you, but it's the ones that are able to speak for themselves, the ones that are able to present in front of clients, the ones that are able to lead in projects that will be seen and get promoted. So even when you are shy, I think there's skills that you need to learn and use them where necessary. We're not saying change your character, change your personality, but it's figuring out when do I need to speak up, and after that I can go back to my shell. But you can't always be in your shell when you're in an environment which requires you to interact with people. And it's always important for you to navigate and check as to what is it that your role requires. Then you can, to your point, identify people that have gone through the same journey as you and that have successfully done so, and ask them to be mentors. I always say you can even go into LinkedIn and inbox somebody and
True.
say, listen, I've been looking at your profile, I've studied your profile, you've gone through the path I'd love to go
Yeah.
through. Can you mentor me? And it's one of those out of the 5 inboxes that you send, maybe one
Yeah.
will agree, or if they all agree, go to the first meeting and test it out, because it's not always about what the mentor wants, but it's what the mentee can benefit from this person as well.
Yes.
And if it works for you, stick with it. And the reason why I'm emphasizing that is that mentors can make your life uncomfortable,
Ooh.
but partly that's their role, right? Because you need to account.
Yeah.
And people that don't have anywhere to account will most likely not succeed. But it's those people that don't always get to do what they want, but you do what you have
Yeah.
to navigate the system. So identify people that can mentor you, express your challenges to them, and let them help you navigate what it is that you need to do to get to the next step.
And I'll be honest with you. Though the term navigate sounds a bit manipulative. It's giving very much 40 laws of power, 48 laws of power, because it's like how do I relate with you to get what I need to get from you to get to the higher step? And it's like how do you do it genuinely without feeling like you're actually in a way kind of being manipulative, or is it one of those things where you have to kind of play the game if you're not playing on the losing
The latter. So I always say, hey, we play politics in corporate.
side?
It's
Yeah.
you do what you need to do to get ahead without necessarily hurting anybody, right?
Mm.
So if you're not hurting anybody, but you're bringing yourself closer to the person that will help you succeed, hey, let's do it. I always bring up an example. I'm not a smoker, I've never been. But I once found myself in an environment where the one person that had a lot of influence, every time I walked into his office, did not have time for me. But my office was facing the smokers area. And I figured out that, okay, he goes there literally 4 times a day for about 15 minutes. And if
Like,
there's one thing I know about smokers, they get along,
yeah.
right? And I figured one of the things that I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go to the smokers corner, not smoke,
Yeah.
go to the smokers corner and have my conversations there.
Yeah.
It's in his space. He's more relaxed there. I hate smoke,
Right.
but it's something that I needed to do.
Yeah.
And I started doing that, and I got a lot of the authorizations that I needed in the smoking area than I would have in his office, because in his office he would give me this stare just on top of his joint, and you know that you
Like, what
need
do you
to
want from
rush.
me?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, however, you need to do what you need to do. You need to figure out human beings, and the biggest challenge again is that human beings are not programmed. So again, playing the whole, this one prefers black coffee in the morning. This one hates coffee. So I might as well catch this one in the morning just after her coffee. But with another person, it's different. Just that is navigating
Yeah.
relationships and making sure that you invest time where you know you're going to benefit the
Yeah,
most.
I think this just goes for across industry, whether corporate,
Okay.
entrepreneur, even in family, I guess,
Okay.
there's a lot.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to catch my mom during the night. But
And that's
again,
how
it
it
goes
works.
back to what you're saying about the soft skills. Being able to read people is such a gift, but it's such and also a necessary gift, a necessary skill to have to be able to say that this is how I can relate with this person. I think learning that there's I think I had heard it, someone, not really sure, saying, someone said that there are no difficult people. And I was like, that's a lie. But you realize it's just like, again, going back to what you're saying, you need to be able to navigate and just find your way around it so that you're not in a position where there's so much reluctance and resistance as well. Now, getting into the darker side of the whole corporate world and HR, the toxic workplace, the good old toxic workplace. I don't think that's ever going to end. I think maybe back then with our forefathers, with our parents, they didn't call it toxic. It was just like, I work hard, I do what I
So
need to
yeah.
do. And you had mentioned that prior to us recording that our parents were just trying to make ends meet. But now it's different.
No, correct. And I think in a time where mental wellness is such a big deal, you also just need to introspect as to how long can you keep up with that environment. And I say that with great respect, understanding that not everybody has the opportunity or the privilege to move or
Yeah.
to say, hey, I'm done with this space. But I always say, and there's always difficult people. There's a lot of leaders that lack emotional intelligence, and that's the worst leader you can ever work for. And maybe just to kick off from where it all starts, which is an area which we're still trying to navigate from an HR point of view.
Mm.
A lot of the big corporates find themselves with good technical people that are brilliant at execution, right? You're a brilliant engineer, you're a brilliant accountant, and then we need to reward you. And the structure in the organization is such that for us to reward you, we promote you.
Yeah.
And part of this promotion means you're now going to lead people. But this person is an engineer, and that's all they want to do, right?
Yeah.
People irritate this person. But now the role requires him to be a leader. And a lot of people find themselves with such managers, with such bosses who are technically brilliant. But from a leadership point of view, yeah, it's not a person you'd want to work for. And it all stems from the fact that organizations don't have a good reward systems just to reward the good specialists. So sometimes
Mm.
keep them as a specialist, but find a good way of rewarding them just so that they also don't feel stuck. Don't promote for the sake of promoting. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done across multiple industries. But now, when you find yourself in that environment, in the toxic environment, again, play the game as much as you can. Bend your back where you need to without
Mm.
necessarily compromising your principles. Keep to yourself where you need to,
Yeah.
avoid what you need to. And in spaces where you can influence the culture, please do. I've seen a lot of junior people that have energy and they are able to speak up. Even junior as they are, they're able to speak up. They're able to get the room lightened up.
Yeah.
They are the guys that will say, "Hey, Luna, open up your cameras."
Yeah.
In a virtual meeting, whereas everybody's just like, "We're not going to do that." So if you've got the capacity and the capability to influence the culture, do it by
Mm.
influencing your peers, try back together to influence up, to lighten up the space that you're in. And when you've tried all these things and it doesn't work, I always say, um, find your way out.
Yeah.
But then let's remember when you get to the next space, interview your boss.
Sure.
Because that's the other sad part, right? Where people hop from one toxic environment
Yeah, to
to another
another.
because you were just trying to get away from the previous environment. But influencing up is not the easiest of things to do. But I always say, if you've got the capability and the capacity to do that, try and do that. I've
Yeah.
seen the most difficult managers um, become soft for one individual. So when this
Yeah.
individual says, "Boss, on Friday we're going out and you are paying," and you hear this person agree,
And everyone is like, I
whereas
know.
everybody's like, how did you get that
Yeah.
right? Right? And it's there's always that one person within the team, and that person must be encouraged to help the rest of the team, lighten up the
Yeah.
mood in that space. And that's how we all help each other instead of waiting for the boss to be better, because they won't always, we hope they change, but sometimes it doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
Especially the older people get, the more difficult it is for them
Yeah.
to revert to a good and solid way of leading people.
Yeah, I think I've had a hard time just even understanding how someone who's an executive and is just an absolutely terrible
Yeah.
person. And I remember asking someone, I was like, this person is difficult, terrible. She was rude to me. I don't even work at this organization. And she said, well, the boss likes her. And I was like, so it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. Everyone else is having such a difficult time working around this person. And it's and it it's bad when it overlaps to now after work people are talking about this particular
Yes.
person, and even after the work friends, you're talking about that person at home. And I wondered, does it not click to them that they are not liked, and or maybe they justify their behavior in a way to say that no, I'm trying to, I see the bigger vision, and I'm aligned with the vision of the organization, but at what cost? Do they not see themselves? Like, how do you
But
help?
I think that's where EQ comes in, right? Because EQ says I'm self-aware and I'm able to receive feedback, because there's things that you'll do, even if you self-aware, there's things that you'll still do. But people with high EQ are also receptive of whatever feedback that they get. But most times people are not, until you point it out. And sometimes even when you point it out, they'll find a way of justifying it. You know, sometimes you tell a manager and you say, listen, your employees are complaining, and then they'll give you a long list of things that they did not do. Yeah, they
Really?
asked them to
Yeah.
do this, they didn't do it. They deliver on Friday, they didn't deliver on Friday, you know. So they are always seeing other people's mistakes, and they don't see how they contribute to the culture in that space. Some organizations are good at checking the temperature from a culture point of view. So this is where we use engagement surveys, and it's not the survey that is the silver bullet here. Is what the top leaders do with the results. So I have seen organizations that have said we're going to be people centric. Your department and the engagement scores are very low. If you don't improve the scores next year, it's going to affect your performance score, and therefore your bonus, your increase, and so forth.
Mm.
So it's also up to top leaders to put in the human factor as part of the scorecard, because most of the times we care most about the numbers, and that's when HR and people that are culture specialists then said, "Oh, wait, we can give you numbers. Here's a survey. Now let's start putting more weight on this element as well." And some organizations get that right, and I think that's what a lot of leaders need to be able to do. Put a number to the people element, because if you treat your people right, they'll give you the results.
Absolutely.
And I always say to my leaders, because when I say that, they say, when do you want us to be soft? I'm like, no. If a person does not perform and you've done your part, I will help you get rid of that person.
Oh.
Legally so. Well, no, I always say that. There's
Yeah.
people, listen, there's people that are lazy. There's people that don't put in the work.
Right.
But as the leader, you've got a duty to them as well. Follow the right processes. If this person does not change, I will help you get rid of them. But at the moment, people are not delivering because of you. People are not delivering because they feel you don't treat them like humans. People are not delivering because they just think you're inconsiderate. And it's the tone of your emails. You're calling their work rubbish. You know, it's things that you do that influence the energy they bring on board. Um, and yeah, that's part of the challenge. But
Yeah.
to answer your question, most people don't see it.
They just don't see
No.
it. Oh, it's terrible. I'll be honest. But then, how do you balance it also as a leader to say, I want to be rich. I don't want to be too rigid, but also I don't want to be lax to the point where people could just submit at any point, because at the end of the day, failure to submit or meet certain deadlines is pressure on the neck of the leader
Yes.
themselves, and the executives now look to you, and it's just a whole problem. So, how does a leader in that sense navigate that particular space of being able to lead with grace, but also with accountability?
Yeah. So I'll always go back to science says if you're going to manage people, and again, we're going with a growing organization. With numbers, they say no leader must have more than 8 people reporting to them. And that's how you create organograms, right? but you should not have more than 8 people reporting directly to you. And the reason for that is that you need to give them time and attention. And again, this is where we say if you've got 5 people reporting to you, get to understand their personalities, get to understand their characters. There's an individual who's going to take your instruction and they don't want to see you after the instruction and they'll deliver. There's a person who, after giving them an instruction, they'll come every 30 minutes and say, I've done this. Do you think I'm on the right track?
Yeah.
They need that type of attention. There's that guy who, and I used to be this kind of student, but luckily not that kind of employee. But there's that person who you tell them on Monday that I need this on Friday, and they don't do anything between Monday and Thursday.
Okay.
And on Thursday evening, they don't sleep and they deliver and they give you what you asked for.
Yeah.
So when you know your people and how they operate, then the amount of grace you afford, the amount of checking in must be different for all these people. For the kind of person that always delivers last minute, you might want to say to them, actually, I need it on Wednesday
So
when
that,
you know
yeah,
that you need it
yeah.
on Friday, right? So as a leader, it's understanding that. It's knowing that one of my employees is a parent and a divorcee, and therefore a single mother. On Fridays, she can't be here until 5. So manage your expectations of them, not the work, but some of the treatment, right? So you can't expect them in the office at 5 p.m. It's understanding those dynamics of who your people are. And I always say, give them the target and ask for the target. How they deliver is neither here nor there.
Mm,
Just be clear on what you're looking for,
mm,
but don't be strict around the how. And a lot of toxic environments are created because managers want to tell people on how
mm.
to do things. Sometimes it's give the targets, and if the person does not meet the targets, find out why. Is it because they're not capable? Is it because the timeline was too soon and they did not have the capacity? Is it because they're just lazy? And for you to find out is you need to ask, not scream, not shout, ask, so that you can then help them in the right path, right? If a person is incompetent, is it a matter of training, or they just are not at the right level? Like you said,
Mm.
extroverts are brilliant with interviews, but then
And then
once
the
the
actual
person
execution.
but once the person is in, you can realize and think, you know what, this is a level 7 role. This person is operating at level 3,
Yeah,
and let's help you navigate that person out.
yeah.
Instead of you being toxic to everybody because of that one person that's not at the right level. Let's manage that person out. But the ones that are capable, you want to just manage them in line with who they are, their circumstances, and so forth. And
Mm.
that's why we always say, even with team building activities, engaging with your team,
Do those work?
it depends on whether the leader knows
Y-
their team.
Yeah, because I
Yeah,
mean, I mean, I've seen some WhatsApp statuses and I wasn't
exactly.
impressed.
Yeah, no. So some people just do that, right? A blanket approach. If you've got a team of 20 something year olds, Friday afternoon drinks might be a brilliant idea. But the more diverse your team is, that might actually be a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And the only way to find out is to ask them as to, hey guys, what would you want us to do as a team that will
Yeah.
cater for the majority? It will never cater for everyone. You're lucky if you can. But ask them. So stop doing the whole thing, the whole Easter egg hunt with 55-year-olds. That's somebody's mouth. And now they must do egg hunts with a 21-year-old intern.
Yeah.
So it's finding out what works, but team buildings, the concept works.
Yeah.
The idea is if we are supposed to build a team, hence team building.
Mm.
How you do it, you must just figure out what would work for your team,
Yeah.
and not just do I think our parents used to call it a boss parade, and you think you'll have a team, a good team. It's like what? Find out what would work.
Yeah.
Bring in a specialist if you need to,
Mm.
but they do work.
Yeah. Actually, just listening to you, I was thinking about because I'm very much in the creative side of things or sector. I work with quite a number of corporates, and sometimes there's just this dissonance in the sense of not being able to find the silver lining, in a sense of here I am and you're saying, hey, we want you because you're very creative in your field and we want to work with you. But then it's okay, cool. So this is what we're going to do. So here's the structure that we're looking at, but allow us the creative freedom to do such and such. So I'm coming from a very free flowy entrepreneurial,
Yeah.
come to work with sneakers on, and then they are just very quite rigid. And then it's I'm wondering, can't they also in the same line afford us the same grace and accountability, so to speak? But I do understand that when you get a vendor from outside, it's a bit different from an internal team. So like, how does, I guess, the entrepreneurial side of thing and corporate kind of align in that side? Does HR play? Was it just again, I guess,
Yeah.
a mind game situation and just do what you need to do to get the job done?
In that instance, I'd, I'd start with trying to navigate the relationship. So, um, corporate, you've asked us to deliver on this. This is what we are going to deliver. This is when we are going to deliver it. This is how we propose to deliver it. So tell them what you're thinking. And then I always say, ask them what they think after telling them,
Yeah.
but always emphasize the end product, because to them, actually, what matters is the end product. But then the mind game here is, what do you think? Right? So that they have input in how you're going to deliver it. And hopefully, in that sense, they feel like they've contributed in how the project is going
I love
to
it.
be delivered.
Brilliant.
And if they say no, what you can then do is do it their way, um, get it right, hoping that with the second project you can then, because now they know you can deliver. Because sometimes
Mm,
it's that, right? It's the whole these young ones in sneakers, you know. But once you've delivered, use that as a base to say, hey, this time can I not come to the office 5 days? I don't need to be there
mm,
for 5 days, but you'll get this on this specific date, and use that as a tool to negotiate the methods of working. But
yeah.
again, still managing those relationships. But the biggest thing about executives is that they want to be in control. So give them a sense of control in that, hey, this is what we are thinking of doing. What do you think?
Yeah.
And hopefully they also feel like they've contributed.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. And it's still in line with the entrepreneurial side of
Yeah.
things. I had a leadership coach for a few months, and it was, I mean, I needed one because I later found out that I'm a bit of a micromanager. I didn't know that. I had to just kind of disperse my team, and then I've had preferred to kind of work with the freelancers because if you don't do the job, you don't get paid. So you don't need motivation from me. You just need to get the job done. And it was easier to not tell people what to do. It was just like, this is all you need to do, figure it out, instead of someone coming to me and saying, okay, cool, I haven't done this before, how should I? And I'm like, Google it. What do you mean? So I'm just trying to navigate building a team. And I had also spoken to a friend about this, and he said it took him 10 years to find, and he's also in the entrepreneurial space, but he's doing very well. And he said it took him 10 years to find our best team, and
Yeah.
now he's very happy. I remember like 3 years in, just three. It took him 10 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? Should I go be like a solopreneur or
They
whatever?
probably needed help with sourcing. But
you know?
yeah.
So how does someone in the, in business, uh, who doesn't have a big budget, but really is looking at building a proper team? Because if you have the right team, then, things move quicker. Your admin is smooth. It's just, you're now operating from SMME to now mid to now, excelling to a greater point in your organization and your business as well. So how can we navigate it at our level?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing in this instance is that, again, self-awareness, right? So you were aware of what was happening,
Yeah.
decided to get a coach, and in a state where you decide that you want a team, I suggest that you first be clear on what you are looking for.
Mm.
So I'm terrible in admin. So if I'm going to get somebody who's going to help me, and somebody who's strong in admin, but I don't want to mother them, right? So be clear on what you are looking for. And if you have to, start writing that down. So when you are seeing people with potential, you can then test for the other things. Yes, this guy is good in the camera work, but it's not just about the camera, right? You want them in your space full time. How are they in terms of time management? How are they in terms of communicating with clients? What is it that test them on the things that you are looking for?
Mm.
And if they're not the one, then sure, one project done. Let's test the next person. And I feel like a lot of people are not good at clarifying and stating what is it that they are looking for. It shouldn't take 10 years, but but it's just being clear on what you're looking for, and asking the right questions with the people that come into your space. And as far as possible, don't compromise on those elements that
Yes.
you're looking for, because they'll come back to haunt you. Unless if, for example, you're now hiring 20, 50 people. In that instance, what you then want to do is this is where you start drafting the process of selection so that you've got a company culture. So, for example, I used to work for a beer beverage organization, and they were very clear on the kind of person they were looking for, to a point where they do psychometric assessments. And I promise you, every time we were in a social gathering, you could tell. You could tell that, it's more or less the same kind, because they were very clear and specific on the kind of person that would survive here, the kind of person that we want here. So sometimes you'd hire an average person with potential, because they've got like the kind of personality and character that you can work with. And you're like, I can train this person,
Mm.
right? Versus looking for a person that has 10 years experience, um, does not need any form of training, but the two of you won't get along. So this is where, again, you do the push and pull method around what can I do without for now, but I can invest here and get the results after a year. Not
Yeah.
again, not 10 years. 10 years is a long time. But I'm happy. But I'm happy they are where they are now, because they were
Yeah,
clear
and
then
also
on who they're looking
they
for.
started quite early, in an industry in Botswana that was very what do you call it, unconventional.
Mm.
And I'm also in that space. I mean, podcasting is so weird. It's weird, but it's sellable. And again, I don't necessarily sell numbers; I sell impact. So I'm an extrovert, so you can tell I'm very good.
Right.
I said it. I'm like, no, don't look at the YouTube numbers. Let me tell you, I can name all 23 views, and it's very different. So I do understand, yeah, that part, and I think I'm getting a lot of free advice that you probably normally charge for here.
I'm
Uh,
glad you know.
it's very good.
But yeah.
It's very good. Earlier we had talked about how nowadays we have people, employees now, who are not looking for the long service award anymore. They're not looking for 20 years of service. It doesn't interest them anymore. They're looking at, they might have their 9 to 5, but they also have something that's their passion, that they're doing on their side, that they may be getting another stream of income for and are probably looking to pivot to that. And the idea of pivoting as well is so interesting. And even friends of mine who are Gen Z and zillennials, so they're called,
Yeah.
mid-gen, mid-millennial,
Millennial.
who even in their workplace are still saying, I'm still applying for jobs. And I'm like, where's the loyalty?
Yeah.
What's going on? What happened? So now, can you just maybe tell us about that? It's a very, it sounds new, but I think this is where we're always leading up to.
No, agreed. And it's a scary space which most organizations don't want to accept.
Yeah.
But we know we need to deal with, and that's why we measure engagement, because the aim is to retain employees. But what people have found the confidence to do is to decide as to what is it that I want in life,
Mm.
and does this organization give me that, or am I just doing this to pay the bills for now? Um, from an individual point of view, I think people are very clear on that. And what some organizations have been able to get right is align and be clear on their values, what they stand for, sell the impact. One organization that did it quite well was Netflix.
Mm.
So before Netflix was the Netflix that we know today, right? In their creative space, they allowed people to, one, be creative and do as they please, to just have the necessary impact. So in their growth trajectory, everybody that was in Netflix wanted to be in Netflix, because they understood the vision, they understood where the organization was going. And if you get that right, if you're able to sell to your employees where you're going, it makes it easy for people to want to stay. Difficult with an organization of 20,000 people, because not everybody's going to connect, right? I don't want to mention friends, but But the bigger the organization, the more complex it becomes. And similarly with Netflix, I saw they've just released the person that started Netflix just released a book, and part of what they are talking about is how do they how do you now manage Netflix now that it's a global
Sure.
organization? Because it's
Yeah.
no longer the same, right? The build up was easy. You had a target, and this you sold it to your people. This is what we're going to do. Similarly, with the likes of Google, they are upcoming. They had nap pods. You could go and nap. They had school in on campus, so you could bring in your kids. They had all these nice things that made people want to be there. And that's what you want to do as an organization. You want people to want to be there. Because right now we're there because we need to be there,
Yeah.
25th of every month. But when you get to a space where you create an environment where people want to be there by virtue of the amenities that are on campus or the vision, and people say, my company is small, but I see where we're going. I see the
Mm.
vision, and I actually want to be part of it. If you can sell that, a lot of people would want to stay because it's no longer just about what I want to do for myself and what I want to pivot into, but I actually want to be part of this great thing that we are building. And organizations just need to be able to, depending on where they are in their lifespan, they just need to rethink that element. It's always great seeing organizations celebrate being a top employer with their employees, because employees then feel like, oh, actually, we were part
Oh
of this. We
yeah.
made this. And if you celebrate with them, you're making them feel like they're part of it. Again, complex depending on the size of the organization. If you
Absolutely.
bring in your 5 people that you work with, you sell the vision, they want to be there because you keep reminding them. But hey, how do you sell it when there's 80 of them and then there's 500 of them and they all still need to connect? So it's more about the why, the purpose, and just creating an environment where people want to be there.
Mm.
Yeah.
Creating an environment where people want to be there. Is that the advice you typically give organizations that may be facing such challenges with maybe people quitting, like retention rather at least?
Definitely. But of course, with a specific organization, would then go into the details of what do you offer? Uh, and
Ah,
sometimes executives or managers know it and they can say it, but sometimes leaders have never thought of it.
sure.
And then this becomes
Yeah.
homework to say, what are you offering? Why must people stay? And that's money, everybody wants money, right? Money aside, why must people work for you? Why must people stay? So if in a consulting space, those are the questions that I would ask you, and then we will talk through it, broken as it is, we'll talk through what your ideas are, what the vision is, and then we'll start talking about what we call the employee value proposition. Is what is it that they need to stay here for? And
Mm.
every organization needs to have a value proposition for employees, much as we've got a value proposition for clients, because
Mm.
that's what we do when we go to clients, right? We say, this is why you need to use us. And that's the value that you're providing to them, but you must then have an employee value proposition. Why must they be here? And we just need to start thinking through those elements. And every
Mm.
organization will differ depending on how good you are at selling your vision.
Yeah. Oh, oh, that's a
Yeah,
good one. The vision, and a very clearly defined
it
vision.
has to be.
It emanates just from who you are and how you treat people and how they feel treated as well and how they feel seen. And I'm also appreciating how it's a very symbiotic relationship to
Yeah.
say that in as much as you're my employer, I'm also valuable to you. I'm a resource and I'm human. I'm
Exactly.
valuable to you. And then what advice would you give both young and maybe just much more long standing employees as well? What advice would you give them when it comes to just really finding peace within the workspace? I know there's just I have friends in corporate and all I ever oftentimes just hear
Yeah.
complaints. And then the younger guys, no complaints at all, to be honest. they just they're cruising. And I'm just always wondering what the dynamics are. Is it because they know they're good and they know they're valuable and they build very good relationships with their bosses, and they know what to ask for, and then you have maybe the older generation that may struggle with that, and maybe more is demanded of them because they're expected to know more and they've been there longer. But the same grace isn't afforded to them in comparison to the younger guys.
I think it's everything that you've said, and from observation, I think the other advantage with the younger people is that they don't identify with their work,
Mm.
whereas millennials and older generations, when you go on a date, top three
What do
questions,
you do?
what do you
Where do you
do,
work?
right?
How much do you earn?
So, so you're already defined by the 8 to 5.
Yeah.
And if that's not going according to what you envisioned, it defines who you are, it defines how grumpy you are. And now you carry the animosity from all the years. I should be a manager. I should be in this particular position or area because you identify so much with this specific position. What I've found with younger people is that they are so dynamic in that it's not just about what they do. You know, they've got life outside of this space. So if you had a good weekend because you were fishing and that's what you do, or on Monday evening you were podcasting,
Mm.
on Tuesday when you come in, you're still energetic because, hey, this is not just it,
Yeah.
right? Um, you've got a life and your life is not just this element. And I think younger people still have a view that things will be good. Yes, here I need to work hard. I need to keep this. I need my family. I need my friends. So it's about your life in totality and not just focusing on the one element. Whereas, like I said, older people, I think we have defined ourselves with what and where you work. And that can easily keep you in a state where you're just like, yeah, when am I retiring again?
Yeah.
Whereas I think the younger people will probably retire at 40 and at 45 start something
Else.
else, because for them it's not about working for 35 years and so forth. I've seen how
Mm.
people delay going into the formal work environment because there's other things that they want to do. There's other things that they want to try out, especially if you're blessed enough not to have parents that will shove the idea of, hey, you must go work,
Yeah.
you know. But I think for me that is it's everything that you said, but it's also this element that young people are just they've got life,
Yeah.
and it's not just defined by this one thing. And I think that would be my advice to a lot of people is to introspect. Is Standard Bank the only thing that you do? You know,
Mm.
is MTN your whole life? Because if MTN frustrates you, then you're frustrated in every other area in your
Mm.
life.
Not saying that
Um,
MTN is an
no, no,
organization that
yeah.
doesn't frustrate. And disclaimer there. But I don't want to keep you here for long, and I'm actually just realizing we've been talking for close to an hour. But
Oh.
I need to talk about this one. Divulging what's too much conversation, what's too much information about your life to your coworkers. I mean, my mom always said, "Watch out, people are witches." You gotta be careful. But then again, you need to be able to have a very good relationship with your colleagues. So it's, what did you do this weekend? No, I went fishing, and then it's, oh, you went fishing. You
Yeah.
had
Oh,
time to fish while I was working.
yeah.
So then it's like, what do you say? What don't you say? How much do you tell? And does it compromise you at some point?
I think again, this goes back to what we started with. It depends on the nature of the relationships that you guys have,
Yeah.
the culture, and other people. So if you if you're too open, that could play at your disadvantage. If you are too introverted, depending on your teammate, that could also be an issue. And every time we have conversations around boundaries, I always say it's good to have boundaries, but it's not boundaries if you walk in and you don't want to talk about your weekend. You don't want to talk about the fact that you got married. We're not saying invite people to your wedding, but um, show people that you're human. I agree. There's a limit to how much you need to divulge, but also be careful not to be a, to be boxed in your own world, because to your point, it's about relationships. If you're going to want to negotiate that increase, um, a boss that knows you fish and has a cousin that also does fishing, your likelihood of getting that increase is very much high. But how would he have known if you did not mention? So it's always studying the relationships and knowing how they interact. So I've picked it up, for example, with a lot of my white colleagues. where you ask them, how was your weekend? And they'll say, oh, it was good, chilled. Whereas I used to respond, yeah, on Friday I did this, on Saturday I did this. And then later you realize, no, man, wait, I'm the one that's talking a lot here.
Yeah.
So you also then read the mood, read the tones, and just say, actually, it was a good weekend. And that's it.
Sure.
But if you have a
Yeah.
team that has a tendency of telling, you're not saying you must be like them, but hey, tell them,
Yeah.
I watched this podcast. It's actually nice. I'd recommend it. And you leave it there. So it's just reading your team members.
Right, learning not to divulge too much is difficult, especially some of us who are so. It's easy to trust.
Yeah.
And I was also telling a friend yesterday that I don't know how to read people. I just assume the best of everyone.
Yeah.
You could be Hitler, and I'm like, that's stash.
Yeah.
I kind of like it. You know, I don't even realize that you're a terrible person. So that's something that I think it's quite interesting. I know now, just in closing, that a lot of people are leaning towards being more zen and finding peace and finding what makes them happy. Um, and sometimes the workplace isn't necessarily where they're happy, but they need to be there. Not everyone does have the privilege um, to find another place to work at. And even me right now as an entrepreneur, I've learned to kind of take time to pause and meditation, and it's helping me, calm down when there's a lot going on. So I mean, what advice? Not even just what advice. What have you been able to do to kind of remain in a state of peace, and inner knowing that everything is going to work out and align, because I've come to learn that whatever happens within always one way or another manifests itself in the physical. Yeah.
I think personally, what I realized with me specifically is that what used to frustrate me was looking at my peers and thinking, that corporate, people are fast tracked quicker than what I am this side. And you then realize that, hey, comparison is a true thief of joy. And what that helped me with is, one, from a career point of view, but also with social media. Just before we started talking about social media, I had to manage what I feed myself on in terms of social media, because what social media does is that it can easily bring close the idea of comparison.
LinkedIn.
Yeah. All of a sudden, you, even with the likes of Instagram, right? All of a sudden you like a Porsche, but you never liked a Porsche, you were an SUV guy, so the idea of pausing and reflecting and thinking about what is it that you like, what is it that you want, and making sure that you clear out the fact that it's not influenced by what's always in front of you, but it's really what you want. And once you've done that, start noting what is it that you want to achieve and how to go about doing that. And the internet is a blessing, right? It might be misused, but it's a blessing. And I think people just need to realize there's a lot out there. So read, don't be scared to ask questions. Find people, Google people that are in spaces that you think you like. Go speak to them, and ask them all the stupid questions that you can. And don't be limited in the career path that you're in. Don't be limited by the circle that you find yourself in. So ask questions. I found the more questions I ask, the more I realize I don't know. And I think in the last 5 years, for example, I thought of changing careers, and these are 4 different careers, because you think you want to do something, but the more you ask, the more it will either fascinate you or it will actually bore you. So I think ask, speak to different people, and the more you ask, the more you are then able to redefine what you need to do and where you are meant to go. And don't just get stuck over the fact that your manager doesn't like you. This is a toxic environment, because the question is, after this, where to, right? So that you don't jump into another toxic space. Be clear on what is it that you're looking for. And again, not everybody has the privilege, especially when you start. But once you're inside, pause, so that you don't find yourself in that space for the next 10 years. So do what you need to do, but wherever you can, just pause and reflect, and find people that have done more or less the same and decide on how you are going to navigate your own space.
Yeah, this stuff is in your blood, hey? I mean, you didn't have any few questions. All my questions, I didn't ask any of them. You were just great. When are you writing your book? The handbook, the HR
Uh,
handbook. I mean,
no, you deal with human beings, and
yeah.
like I said, a lot of what I've said, you just need to think around how it applies to you so that it's
Mm,
not theoretic, right? Because
yeah.
otherwise it becomes very high level. But you just need to pause and think. And I do this for a living, so
You earned your spot.
thanks.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for coming, well, physically this time, again, and honoring my invitation. And I think a lot of people are going to learn a lot. I have. This was initially going to be around 30 minutes, but oh well. This is a masterclass. Yeah, it's HR masterclass. And I appreciate also how you were able to kind of touch on, entrepreneurs and also those in corporate and different generations as well. So I believe that your organization is in great hands. I endorse you. So
Thank you very much.
I endorse you. But yeah, thank you for coming. And thank you all for watching. I'm sure you guys have learned quite a lot. And if you have any further questions, we might have them again. Who knows? Um, we'll pay you this time. Maybe, perhaps.
Is that on record?
I don't know. See you next time. This is Conversations with Fafana. Leave a comment, like,